Welcome to a special episode of So-and-So, brought to you by Bernina, Made to Create. I'm Meg Goodman, and we're about to introduce you to several special organizations we met at the Houston Festival 2022. Each of these groups uses sewing or quilting to care for people who are struggling because of where they live, the health burdens they carry, or from injuries they sustained in service to our country. Come with us now as we meet the extraordinary who care for the exceptional. Our first visit is with Quilts Beyond Borders. In doing their work for the past 15 years, with 17 volunteers, they've made and handed out more than 30,000 quilts. Carla Tremer, you are with Quilts Beyond Borders. I understand that you lead the effort. Would you tell us about it?
Yes, we're a charity that's been in business, well, a charity, not business, but for 15 years. And during that time, we have given out over 30,000 quilts around the world. We started in Ethiopia because a couple of the founders had some ties to Ethiopia, and I personally grew up there. So when I was walking through a show one time, I saw a little sign on the wall that said, "We want quilts to give to an orphanage in Ethiopia." And by then I had run out of relatives to quilt for, so it was time to do something for other people. So I started and picked up 3 tops from their show because they had a little booth. And I took my 3 tops and I long-armed them and I returned them with 7 other quilts and said, "I'd be happy to long-arm for you." A couple days later, on my porch, I had a huge box with about 50 tops in it, and I said, "Gee, I can't do all of them," but I agreed to coordinate long-armers for them. And so that's how I got involved as part of the core of the group. There are 17 of us. We are all volunteers. We have no bricks and mortar. But our role is to get together people who can give quilts and send them or bring them overseas, and some in the U.S. as well. Particularly during the pandemic, about half of the quilts we give out have been to American foster children and battered children. This year we have given a lot to Ukrainian refugees. We have some established routes over the years to give quilts to refugees overseas in Syrian refugee camps, Afghanistan refugee camps, and so forth. So a lot of them go to refugees. We started out with orphans in Ethiopia. It happens that I grew up there. And so I went over on a trip in 2012 and took a couple hundred and gave them out to orphans and taught 6 indigent women how to sew so they could earn a living. And so every 2 or 3 years, I will go and do that. There are other members of our team who will go places like Haiti and Mexico. One has a sister that goes to Kazakhstan. So we do a lot of sending and taking of our quilts all over the world.
Do you have any stories about the recipients of your quilts?
We had Murphy's Law, where every time we signed up for a charity, they suddenly contacted and said, "We're leaving the country because there's some issues with our staff or whatever." And we ended up in the 3rd place, and some of the communications had fallen through the cracks, and they hadn't arranged any orphanages for us. So we arrived with 113 quilts to give out, and we had no orphans to give them to. Well, the next morning I went back to the church that I grew up in, and one of our colleagues went to the church that her mother had served at. And I was familiar with my church, right? This was her first time, and she didn't know that she was going to be in a church that gave a 2-hour service all in Amharic, the Ethiopian language, which she understood none of. But she was introduced by people who knew what she was doing there to the group. And after the service, a young man came up to her and said, he introduced himself and he said, "I'm a Bina. If I do some charity work or some volunteering in an orphanage, so if you have any extra quilts, we would love to receive some." And she said to him, well, how many do you need? And he said, we have 113 orphans in our orphanage. So, we've sort of felt like over the years somebody up there has been looking out for us to make things come together.
Carla, if people want to find out more about Quilts Beyond Borders, or if they want to get involved, what's the best way to do that?
Well, our blog to learn about us is quiltsbeyondborders.wordpress.com, and our email is quiltsbeyondborders@gmail.com. And when you type in Quilts Beyond Borders, make it all one word in either URL.
Quilting offered hope through this next group, but for a very different reason. The COVID-19 Hope Quilt Project was founded to honor frontline workers and to memorialize those lost to the pandemic. Founder Diane Canny tells us their story.
I'm actually the founder with my very sassy 97-year-old mother now, who 2 years ago said instead of giving her a gift, we should do something to help people during the pandemic. So this began in 2020. It's loosely based on the AIDS quilt. So we have a traveling quilt show, which is across the country. We accept panel blocks that are 10.5 inches square from children as young as 5 to adults age 95. So it's a national memorial project. We've been very fortunate to have Bernina be one of our sponsors, enabling people actually to make quilts here at the show today, and blocks, and then they can form them into quilts. And we're working with some communities that are also doing their own community projects to make a hope quilt. They will travel with us, and then they'll place it in a hospital or an area that was very affected by that.
How did you decide that it would be a quilt that would be the project that you would take on to represent what happened?
Oh, I think quilts have been, for centuries have been used. It's a way of connecting people of different cultures, of ways of life, and it's an inexpensive, it's transportable, historical, and affordable at the same time. And during COVID, at a time of isolation, I thought it'd be a way of connecting people. It also has always been used as a grieving tool. We basically combine a Valor quilt with a memorial quilt. And as an artist, I'm a portrait artist, I started painting complementary portraits, which I still do, incorporating them to help people grieve. And we worked them into a memorial quilt working with some volunteer quilters. So it's the concept we put together, and I thought, what a great time to bring people across America in a time of isolation. So it's really based on the historical use of it in America and other parts of the world.
Where are some of the places you've traveled to, and can you share with us any stories of people that your work has touched?
Yes, one of the things I've done 2 honor events at the Lincoln Memorial and Jefferson Memorials in Washington, D.C. I live about an hour from that area, and my first portrait was of a gentleman who's actually, I've got on a quilt here today. So his name is Thomas, and he died at the age of 32 when in an area at a time in April in Detroit when they didn't have enough testing. So I decided to do his portrait. I had his half-finished portraits at the Jefferson Memorial when his father came walking up with his entire family, his mother in a wheelchair, and said, "Are you the lady who painted my son?" And I was so touched by that because I just had brought him, and he was in the letter O. I'd had these giant letters of hope that I created out of wood that I could put out to display to keep people away from them, and yet people could observe the artwork with these panels from across the nation made by children and adults. So that story was so moving that I made a portrait for him that I presented to. He lost a son. His son is only 6 years old, and he remains. So I made a portrait for him to have with his family. And I've had a series of similar, very moving events that have inspired me to continue this. We've had people, one of the most interesting stories is I had 8 deaf and hard of hearing quilters learn to sign to create their hope quilt in Southern California. And then it was long-armed quilt did by a woman here in Texas, in Sugar Land, Texas. So I love the idea of connecting people who've never met to make something beautiful that are for the greater good. So I have multiple stories like that. Native Americans are represented, the military, anyone from a delivery person to those who, physicians and physical therapists and other people who died in the line of duty, or those who are forever impacted by being a long-haul COVID patient. And I'm also part of the only memorial in the United States. There is a yellow heart memorial. I learned that in the UK, they would put a yellow heart in windows. That meant that someone had died, so you knew not to disturb the home. So a young 40-year-old man died in Wall, New Jersey, so we're part of that permanent memorial. And my goal is to have the quilts be part of a national permanent memorial in America for the future to capture this moment. So I've actually captured different types of, having people's temperature taken, so we don't forget all of the all the things we had to live through during this time. And by having children be involved, I had kids draw Zoom windows as this was their life, with their doctor in one, a teacher in another. And from a child's point of view, it was so interesting. This is his world. It was very normal for him that was his life during the pandemic. So I found that very inspiring. I've had high school teachers. There's a quilt behind you that, while they were in lockdown, they had the kids have the same assignment. They all created very different artwork, and it's beautifully quilted and has traveled the country as well. So I guess I consider this kind of a fabric of hope to connect the fabric of America. We've actually expanded now to working with kids who were affected, underserved communities where I live in Virginia. So they're making their own clothes. We have a thrift store there, so it's called Mobile Hope. So we've expanded so that we can move beyond that and help children learn sewing skills to be independent and get vocational training. So I'm kind of merging and growing this as the pandemic recedes. We still have hope needs in the future.
Diane, if people want to become involved with the project, if they want to help support you, how can they get a hold of you?
You can easily go to our website. It's www.hopequilt.org. My public charity is called Art of the Matter, where I use art to bring positive change in times of crisis. The Hope Quilt is one of my projects. So just looking at the hopequilt.org, you can easily find everything you need on how you can make panel blocks. And if you would like to have a portrait made for a loved one, you can nominate them for that. And our team will pick them up and decide if we can do that. So that's an easy way to get a hold of us.
The war in Ukraine spawned an effort that essentially took on a life of its own as an accidental success. Wrap Ukraine in Quilts founders Gina Halladay and Beth Hawkins tell us how they did it.
We saw what was happening in Ukraine, and we had some friends that were living in Ukraine that had fled with their children, and we saw a picture of them. And we were on a Zoom call, and my husband said, "My wife's a quilter. Could we send you something of comfort?" And she just started bawling and said that an American would care about a Ukrainian was amazing. And so Beth and I have been in the quilting industry for several years and sort of retired. And we said, hey, we can call our quilty friends. We can collect 100 quilts, maybe 500 at the most, and we'll figure out a way to get them to Ukrainian refugees. And so we put the word out, and we have been getting quilts on our porch every day since March 17th.
We are going to hit 15,000 quilts today. We're here at Quilt Festival, and quilters and guilds are bringing us quilts. And then we also have a website where quilters can register their quilts and then send them to us. And so and with the quilt counter, and so our counter just keeps going up. We've received quilts from all 50 states and Canada. 15,000 quilts. It's amazing. Quilters are givers and have thanked us over and over for taking their quilts and figuring out how to get them to Ukraine and Poland and some of the other neighboring countries that are housing refugees from this war.
So we didn't mean to start a charity. We just thought we were going to get a few hundred quilts to some people that we knew in Ukraine, and it's grown. We did become a 501c3, did I say that right?
Yes,
charity. We have been able to hand deliver about 3,000 of those 15,000 quilts to refugees. We've been over to Poland twice. That wasn't on our radar. Didn't think we'd be going to Poland twice this year and going again probably soon. And but we've also partnered with a charity that we discovered online that they are, it's called Lifting Hands International, and they have one location in the United States. Happens to be 5 miles from my house, and they're taking cargo containers of aid every 2 weeks to Ukraine. They need blankets and quilts, and so they're our partner to distribute, and they distribute them to Poland, Moldova, Romania, and then to displaced people in Ukraine.
Can you tell us any stories about the interactions that you've had with people who you've given the quilts to?
Yeah, we were at a train station in Warsaw, and they were just coming in off the bus. She had traveled about 40 straight hours with 2 little kids. She came in exhausted. Somebody took her kids and took care of her kids. She laid down on that cot. You could just see the stress level in her face, and we took a quilt and just put it over her, and she looked up at us just with tears in her eyes that someone would care about her. And the other aspect of our business, our charity that we didn't think we were had no ideas, that people have been so grateful to us for providing a way for them to give.
Yeah, one of the things that we do is we have the ability for a quilt maker to go to our website and just register their quilt or quilts that they're sending us. It's just simple: name, address, where they're from, a short message to the recipient, and then they can just print that piece of paper, fold it up, put it in a plastic bag, a sandwich bag or something, and safety pin it to the quilt so it stays on there all the way over to Poland or wherever it ends up. And it's got a couple QR codes on there. When we receive the quilt, we scan our QR code, and that will send an email to that quilt maker telling them, we got your quilt, it's on its way to Ukraine. When that recipient overseas gets that quilt, there's a message printed in Ukrainian, is a message of comfort and hope from us, our organization, and then also tells them to scan this QR code. They can see who made the quilt, where they're from. They can see that message that that person has sent to them, and then they have the ability through an anonymous email system on our website to send a message of thanks or whatever from them. And so we've gotten hundreds of stories. Some people just a quick sentence of thanks. Other times it's 2 or 3 paragraphs of where they're from and what happened to them and where they fled and who they're with and just their whole history. So the stories that we get, we just got about 2 weeks ago an email from a Ukrainian soldier. So we know our quilts are getting to the front line. He's in a bunker in his camo, and he's got a big hot pink quilt behind his head. And in Ukrainian, we had to use Google Translate to translate his message, but it just was a couple paragraphs of thanks and a little bit about, what they're going through and just what his whole unit received quilts from our organization from different quilt makers, and he just thanked us for the hope that it brought to them, and then the love and the comfort, and then the warmth. That one-on-one, human-to-human connection is our purpose. And everything we do is, our vision is to just make that human connection. So that's been kind of our overriding thing. Yeah. We say we accidentally started a charity, but that was our purpose in the very beginning, was this one human connection that we had. And it's just grown, and we're trying to just grow and expand, but always keep that in the back of our mind, that it's not just something that's obscure and abstract. It's one quilt maker putting love into every stitch, because that's what we do when we make a quilt. We think about that person that it's going to be gifted to, and all of that love and care and comfort can reach a person overseas who's in a situation that's unreal, unbelievable. They lived our lives, and now they're in that situation, so we try to imagine what that would be like, and then that it can comfort them from across the world is amazing.
So when people want to find out more about this effort or they want to get involved, how can they contact you?
Yeah, we have a website called wrapukrainewithquilts.com. And then we also have on social media is Hello Cottons, HELLOCOTTONS, Instagram and Facebook. We post 3 or 4 pictures every day with people receiving the quilts. Kind of tells our story on our social media.
Quilts have run the gamut of care, from covering those whose world was shattered by outside forces to covering and caring for those whose personal world was shattered from within. Coordinated by the Blanton-Davis Ovarian Cancer Research Program at the University of Texas M.D. Anderson Cancer Center, the Ovarian Cancer Quilt Project seeks to build awareness about ovarian cancer through the artistry of quilting. Lisa Smith is with the M.D. Anderson Ovarian Cancer Quilt Project. Please tell us about what you do for the organization, and please tell us about this wonderful project.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, we're with the M.D. Anderson Cancer Center, the #1 cancer institution in the nation. And, we love sharing that because we do great work. Cancer is by no means cured, but, so many late and great research advancements is really turning things around and causing people to have more chance of living a long, healthy life. But this particular program, it falls under our Blanton-Davis Ovarian Cancer Research Program. And what this event is all about, it's an biannual online quilt auction where we receive quilts from all over the world. I think the furthest we've received a quilt, I think, was from Ireland before. So anyone can donate. They can go to our website at ovarianquilt.com and see all of the guidelines. But this is one of two events that we put on to raise funding for ovarian cancer research. So we promote a year in advance, and that's what we're doing here today at the International Quilt Festival. The auction will be in the fall of next year. By that time, we'll probably have about, on average, about 55 quilts to auction off. All of the quilts, they're praised professionally, and the opening bid starts at 50% of the appraised value. And so once the auction is over, it runs 2 weeks. As I mentioned, all of the proceeds will go towards ovarian cancer research, and this is our contribution to helping women their lifespan to increase more than what it used to be in the past. But thanks to advances in research, they have more longevity of life.
Lisa, why did you decide to build this project around quilts?
Well, that's kind of lengthy, but I'll give you the short version. I've been in this position since 2013. The program itself, the actual online quilt auction, started in 2009, but it wasn't even a quilt auction back then. We started out, a lady from the community who had been touched by ovarian cancer brought us a lot of quilt squares. I guess you can't even call them squares, but quilts, but just little squares. And we started out in a church basement, piecing them together. Women from the community and quilting guilds came together, and just humble beginnings. And it went from there until the first auction launched in 2009. And, we opened it up to everyone. Created a website, and people have been donating ever since. And again, it's strictly because of our mission to raise ovarian cancer awareness, because unfortunately so many women are not aware. Ovarian cancer particularly, because the symptoms and the signs, while other gynecologic cancers have screenings, ovarian cancer at this point to date still does not. But the symptoms are all familiar. Every woman gets bloated, every woman gets fatigued, every woman, at some point or another lose their appetite. So those are very general things that women experience, and a lot of times when someone is diagnosed with ovarian cancer, it's in the latter stage, which is never good. But again, because of the latest advancements in research, while we don't have a screening, there are other clinical trials and forms of research that when people or women come to get tested, not tested, but have some symptoms, and get different tests ran, and find out they have ovarian cancer. It's not at that later stage like it once was.
Lisa, if people would like to get in touch with you to learn more about or get involved with your organization, what's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. They can go to our website at www.ovarianquilts.com, or even if they Google M.D. Anderson Cancer Center, they can put in ovarian they can Google M.D. Anderson Cancer Center, or just Google Ovarian Cancer Quilt Project, and all of our information will come up, and they'll go to our page and see very detailed information, how they can give, how they can support, how they can volunteer, or if they need to contact me directly. As I mentioned, I am the program coordinator for the Ovarian Cancer Quilt Project, and we have a long email address. It's Gin Onc, that's GYNONC communityrelations@mdanderson.org. But if they go to the website, they'll see it and be able to click the link and send the message directly to me.
No matter the approach they take, these organizations all have one thing in common. They saw a need to be of service, and they leveraged quilting to fill that need. We have more stories of amazing organizations to share, and we'll do that right after this short break.
Hey, it's Jedi Amanda. You know that dream studio you have in your head with every machine, notion, and accessory you want? We've all got one, and I just designed mine at BerninaSweepstakes.com. You can design your own too and then win it. I'm a cosplayer, so this was an ideal situation for me to design my own studio. It was super cool, down to the giant mirrors and lighting and sewing machines that I have in my dream studio. Make sure you're in it to win Bernina's Dream Studio $100,000 giveaway. Design your own dream studio at BerninaSweepstakes.com today. Dream it, design it, win it.
Quilting Beyond Borders, COVID-19 Hope Quilt, Cover Ukraine with Quilts, and the Ovarian Quilt Project all started out small with an idea and people who believed in that idea. Our next organization started out big right from the start, enlisting volunteers in more than 120 chapters to make bright pillowcases for children in more than 330 hospitals. Houston Chapter Coordinator Sheila Kristynik tells us about their work, accomplishments, and how family who have a child going through cancer treatment can find more general information on how to cope.
The organization is Ryan's Case for Smiles, and what we do is we make pillowcases. We have volunteers that make pillowcases for all the children's hospitals in the Houston area. Of course, we have chapters all over the U.S., and mostly they go to children that are life-threatening diseases or injuries. And I started in 2016, and how I got involved was my nephew was diagnosed with cancer, and I felt useless, wanted to do something. I didn't, at that time there was really nothing you could do, but you wanted to do something. So I looked up and found Ryan's Case for Smiles, researched it, thought it was something I could do, so I gave them a call, and they said, well, by the way, we're looking for a coordinator for Houston. And not knowing where I was going to get all these pillowcases from, I took it and ran with it, and I have never done without pillowcases. I have some great volunteers.
So how do you get the pillowcases?
We have volunteers that church groups, school do group community projects. And so they just look up Ryan's Case for Smiles and get with me, and that's mainly where I get all my pillowcases.
How can people learn about or get involved with your program?
We have a website, Ryan's Case for Smiles. It has all the information. And then not only do we do pillowcases, but we also have information for coping with a child that's ill. And also we have programs for the siblings, because sometimes they feel like they're left out.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you about the organization that's important for people to know?
Just that there's a lot of information out there on the website for anyone that has a child with a serious threatening disease and looking for information, not only for their for help for their child or for the siblings, to help them cope with what they're going through.
In August of 2021, we met Shelancia Daniel of the Creativity Shell on this podcast. We were able to talk with her in person in Houston, and she brought us up to speed on what she and the Creativity Shell have been up to since our first meeting.
Well, the Creativity Shell, we are a nonprofit organization. We started this in 2015 with a mission to bring back creativity, some of the home economics classes back into the education system. But after doing it for a few months, we realized that mission was just as important, but focusing on the mental health of our children and the importance of using creativity in creative trades like sewing, textile arts, quilting, how important it is that for healing and for just mending seams, as we like to call it. Throughout our time, we've been working with different populations of children. We've worked in shelters with children who have been rescued from sex trafficking, worked with children who have been homeless. Right now, we currently work in the juvenile probation department. We teach children in our own studios. We see so many children suffering from just common things, not so common, but things like anxiety, depression, and poor problem-solving skills, poor decision-making skills. And throughout our time over the last 7 years or so, we've been really able to use our creative trades and the skills that we've been teaching them in our classes to help them cope and learn with all the things that we're teaching them.
Now, when we talked in your special episode, you were talking about where you're located. Would you tell us about how people can find you and where you're at?
Awesome. We actually, our main location is in Kingwood, Texas, and we just moved to a 20,000 square foot facility, which is amazing. We have our own building now, which is more of our own permanent home, and we're really happy about that. We've been able to expand it and teach cooking classes, pottery classes, more art classes, and still a huge emphasis on the sewing, textile arts, and quilting as well. And we have a second location in Rochester, New York, where they're also in the process of moving that studio as well to a larger facility. And we've just been so grateful to have hundreds of children each week coming through our doors and just being able to teach them and share our creative skills and trades with them.
Do you have any stories you can share with us about one or two of the kids that you have worked with and how your project has helped them?
Well, this is actually something happened about 2 weeks ago, and it's not really a sewing story, it's a cooking story. I teach a group of boys, about 50 boys in the juvenile probation department. I teach them how to cook. And about 2 weeks ago, we made all the boys wanted to make chicken and waffles, and I was like, you know what, this is a special day, it's a special recipe, we'll do this. And they had a field day. So I was like, hey boys, this is a special day, you guys all came together, this is something you all wanted, so if there's something else that you can all come together and agree on, we'll do it. And one of the students said to me, can you teach me how to make a spread? And in my mind, I am thinking charcuterie board or jam or something. And it was like, no, Shelancia, that's jailhouse slang. Like a jailhouse spread is actually a dish. It's food that you make using common commissionary foods, and you put it all together, and that's what it is. And I paused. I said, listen, I'm constantly telling kids, hey, when you grow up, you can be this, or when you get out of prison, you can do this. But this student was telling me, you know what, teach me how to survive my here and now. I am in this place, this is something that we do here, that it's done, and I need to know how to do it so I can get out of here. And I thought that was so powerful, and it was so uplifting, because so many times as parents, as educators, we're saying when you go to college, or when you get married, or when you buy a house, but we've stopped focusing on the here and now for children. How to survive, grade 7, grade 8, first homecoming dances, those things that bring them anxieties, right? So that made me just kind of refocus and look at everything that I'm doing, whether it's sewing, whether it's cooking, whether it's art, to say we need to help children survive today. We need to help their mental health survive today. And it's not that we shouldn't focus on tomorrow, but if we don't get them past today, there will not be a tomorrow.
If people want to reach out to you to find out more about your work or get involved, how can they do that?
Awesome. Well, we are at the Quilt Festival this year, and we are promoting a new club that we've started called our Sew a Little Love Club. And the website is www.sewalittlelove.org. And what we're doing is we are getting so many requests from all over the world for our youth items, our love bugs, our love hugs, our literacy cubes, items that promote positive mental health and education. They're really easy to sew, and for people who may not be able to sew a big quilt, sewing a love bug is a beginner project. A literacy cube is a beginner project that any sewing skill level can definitely help us out. You can join our club. It's $25 a year. You gain access to free patterns, monthly tutorials, places that are looking for these items. So if you want to be, or if you live anywhere, California, Oregon, Texas, New York, if we have a location that is in that space that is looking for one of these items, you can log in. You can say, hey, this is somewhere that's close to me. I can sew this item, and you can basically pick and choose what you want to help us out with.
Finally, we visited with Quilts of Valor, a nonprofit that awards quilts to service members and veterans who have been touched by war. Suzanne DiCarlo is with the Quilts of Valor project, which is well known, but I don't know if people really understand the significance of what you do and the complexity of what you do. Would you tell us about your program?
Sure. We're 19 years old as a nonprofit, and we were started by a mother who had a son in Iraq, and she was worried to death because he was a turret gunner. And she knew as a quilter that quilts were comforting. And so they actually awarded the first one in Walter Reed to an injured soldier who had come back. And we just kind of, the chaplain realized the healing power of a quilt, the gift of gratitude from someone he didn't know, who was just an American saying, thank you. And we have just grown to, we've awarded now over 330,000 across the nation. And many hands handle these. They can be simply a block in a quilt. And then the next group take the blocks and put them into a quilt top. And then the quilt top's handed off to a long armer who long arms it, and somebody else binds it. So many people have touched a quilt. Or it can be a single person who has made the quilt. And they do it for just so many reasons. Whether it's just, I'm an American and I don't know what else to do to say thank you. And we awarded 2 this morning. And a female soldier we surprised the PR guy who has 18 years of service, and he was just here to do something to document her getting it, and we wrapped him too. And he said he's been married 10 years, and 5 years of those, he's been away from his wife. So it's those kinds of stories that you hear from these active duty and veterans that spur you along and make you want to. As the Texas State Coordinator, I love to have the person who made it, whether they quilted it or whether they actually pieced it. I like to have them involved because once they wrap a veteran with a quilt they've made, I got them. And if we can make a quilt and we can award it to them, we feel it's just like our Purple Heart or our civilian award. And they've paid a lot of price in their service to receive it, and they are so grateful. And yet it gives us, as an American, a way to say thank you. Because, you see a veteran with a hat on, you say thank you for your service. That's nice, and that's important. But to tell them that you're being given a quilt made with love and prayers and a lot of positive thinking, and we want to give this to you just because you need comfort and healing.
Suzanne, how do you identify the servicemen and women who are the recipients of the quilts?
They're all around us. They are your neighbors. They're the people you go to church with. They are just all around. We have a national request system on our website, www.qovf.org, and you can go on to nominations and awards and fill out a request for anyone in the nation, in all 50 states. And then it is then sent to a state coordinator who assigns it to a local group, and they reach out to that person and they make a quilt for them and they award it. Sometimes a group may do award ceremonies once a year, twice a year. And maybe it's a situation, once you get to know your veteran, that you need to do it in a personal where, because they have their PTSD is so bad. I've got one who, he won't leave the house. So I'm going to his house to him, just me, him, and his wife. because he can't get out anymore. And she says, just forget it, never mind. I said, no, ma'am. If I have to, I'll mail it to you in case he doesn't want anybody around. Whatever I have to do, he deserves a quilt, and he's hurting.
Would you tell us again where people can go if they want to learn more about or get involved with you?
They can go to our website or just Google Quilts of Valor. And the website is www.qovf.org. And you kind of have to surf the website, you know. You can, there's a thing across the top that says about QOV or Mega Quilt. And just look, you can volunteer to be a long armor. We are desperate need. We have like 11,000 members. And so you got to have 11,000 people making quilts. And we only have about 300 long armors. So, you know, the ratio's not real good. But we try to recruit long armors and ask them, would you quilt one or two a month or one a month, whatever. And it's just, if they can go on the website and look and get information, they can. Under About QOV, there is a drop down where you can look who's in my area. And you can search by state. And you get these little blue circles, and you can click on them, and it allows you to contact a group. If you know somebody that you want to nominate, you can go to Nominations and Awards and fill out the nomination form. It'll go straight to that state. That gets assigned, and it doesn't matter where they live. We can get it done.
It was a real joy to get to meet those doing so much for so many. People who took the time to identify a need and then fill it. People who had no idea where their efforts would lead them, but they kept going, and day by day, things fell into place to move them toward their goal. Whether serving those with health needs, those needing comfort from war, or simply saying, I see you and you matter, the common thread for all is sewing and quilting. Once again, the community of sewists have come together to serve the greater good. Our thanks to all who took the time to share their stories of their organizations. If you'd like to learn more about any of these, you can go to our website, sewandsewpodcast.com, for their contact information. If you know a nonprofit organization you think has an outstanding story, a story that should be shared on this podcast, please drop me a note to meg@sewandsewpodcast.com or just complete the form on our website. Be sure to subscribe to, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite platform, and visit our website, sewandsewpodcast.com, for more information about today's and all of our guests. That's SEWANDSO podcast.com. And finally, I want to thank Bernina for making this program possible. I'm Meg Goodman, and I look forward to you joining us next time on So and So.